the previous session. So we looked at some schools of philosophy which consider only one type of arcade to be the basic unit of universe. Then there are other schools which consider only one arcade, that is only one type and also one instance. There are no multiple tokens of that type. So some of them, popular one we know already, Advait. So they say everything, the only reality that exists is Brahman, and whatever we are seeing is only Maya. It is a projection of Brahman. It is a projection of this world onto Brahman. The pet example which they take many times is like one may mistake a rope to be a snake, but that does not mean the snake is actually there. You may go there, test, do something, move it, touch it. You will realize that it's a rope. So what happened just a while ago was we projected an entity called snake onto that rope. It is only a projection. The snake is not real, only the rope was real. Similarly, it is we, because of our ajnana or whatever reasons, we are projecting this entire world onto Brahman. The only real thing is Brahman. He is like the rope. This world which we are projecting on him is like the snake. We are seeing this variety and all these things, but Brahman is not that. Brahman is Nirgun, Nirvikar, infinite, Satchidanand. So they have a very elaborate description of Brahman and Maya, how Maya comes from Brahman, all those things are there. There are also interpretations of Ramayana, Advaitic interpretation of Ramayana and Visishtadvaita interpretation of Ramayana. We'll probably touch some examples if time permits. But again, like Bhagavad Gita has many commentaries and interpretations by different schools of philosophy. Each of these itihas, we know Ramayana, Mahabharata, they have different interpretations by different schools and very proper technical interpretations. Every term there is technically analyzed. So those are some examples where art is inquiring into reality. We'll see some of them. After Advait, in the Greek tradition, we have something similar by a philosopher called Anaximander. He spoke of something called apeiron. Apeiron, closest term in Sanskrit is aparimit. Aparimit means unbounded, limitless, infinite, indefinite. So how did he come up with this idea of apeiron? Again, there is a nice reasoning he has. In the world, we see so many opposites. Hot, cold, dark, light, day, night, all kinds of opposites we see. But it cannot be the case that one of these opposites has come from the other, because something cannot create its own opposite. So there has to be a different source for both these than any of them being a source for each other. And this different source should be beyond all these opposites. And this different source should be imperceptible, infinite, unbounded. Because that which comes into being has to go out of being. That's a kind of an axiom. So we see these things coming into being and going out of being, these entities or qualities, whatever we see. So the source itself should not have these limitations. The source should be eternal. It should not have come. If it had come, it will die. So either something is an origin, or it is originated from something. We know these things are not origins, the opposites. So they have originated from something. That something is apeiron or aparimit. And he was the first philosopher who sort of spoke of something infinite. Till then, before him, no one spoke of infinity, or even after him for a long time, no one spoke of infinity. They all imagined world to be finite. Like entire universe to be finite. Even Thales thought entire universe to be finite. Even Pythagoreans thought entire universe to be finite. So it was Anaximander who sort of made a shift. Now he made a shift from Thales, in the sense Thales made a shift from supernatural realm to natural realm, from mythical gods to water. Now Anaximander made a shift from perceptible realm to imperceptible realm. Thales shifted from imperceptible gods to perceptible water. Anaximander made the shift from perceptible water to imperceptible apeiron. That is a major move. I mean, how can one even think that something which is solid, something which is gross, something which is tangible has come from something very intangible. That idea itself is a jump in thought. It's not an easy idea to come up with. So they have made such leaps. So Anaximander is important for that. And Anaximander's student was Anaximenes. He posited air as arche. Now it may seem that it's like going back to Thales. Thales said water, he said air, so what is the difference? But there is a, again, subtle difference here. In Thales' thing, everything originated from water, but in Anaximander's thing, everything is a transformation of air. Everything is nothing but air. In Thales' thing, everything is dependent on water. In Anaximenes' thing, everything itself is a form of air. So it's a transformation of the same thing. It is not coming out of that, it is modifying into that. It is a modification of that. So this is a principle which we find very popularly in science. We know conservation of energy or conservation of momentum. This so-called conservation principle, the roots can be seen here. He says air, when it rarefies, it becomes fire. When it condenses, it becomes water. And when it condenses further, it becomes solid. So everything seems to be a transformation of air itself. So air itself has taken all these forms we see around us. So air is the arche. So that imagination.
So they don't talk about space there.
Right now, first of all the details are not available to us. All the fragments are not available to us. One can try filling the gaps in that system by taking the spirit of the system, whatever is available to us. So maybe he may not consider space as a real thing at all. He may just consider spatial entities as real, which are transformation of air. But space is an inferred thing. Because there are entities which seem to occupy different spatial positions, we infer something called space.
There is something called space.
There is something called space. But otherwise, even like this said, there is nothing like space and time. There is no absolute space, there is no absolute time. Imagine this entire universe is empty. There is no entity in this world, no material entity. Even then, do you still know there is some entity called space? Or imagine there is no change happening in this world. Nothing is changing, no event is happening. Do you still believe there is something called time? So these are like the limits of imagination. What is space, what is time? Are they pre-existing? Are they like pre-existing containers into which these spatial entities and temporal events have come and sat? Or they are just conventions which we consider because of our experience of spatial entities and temporal events. So Newton and Leibniz have a very interesting debate on this. Newton believes there is absolute space and absolute time. Whether there are entities occupying space or events occupying time or not, Leibniz believes the notions of space-time themselves ride on the existence of spatial entities and temporal events. So again, within that school we should, are we speaking according to Leibniz, are we speaking according to Newton, like that. Yeah. So here, if you ask me what I would think, I think he would consider space to be relative. He may not consider space to be absolute. He will not consider space to be pre-existing into which other things have come and sat. He may say there are spatial entities because of which we have a notion called space. That's what I think. And then we get Parmenides, who can be considered like first rationalist philosopher. Rationalist philosopher in the sense, suppose my experience and my reason conflict with each other. They contradict each other. Then which one would I side with? Would I side with my experience or would I side with my reason? Parmenides said I would side with my reason. In that sense, he was the first rationalist philosopher. Though your reason may contradict your experience, it may seem counterintuitive. He is not saving the appearances basically. Like, he gives reasoning. He says there is only one thing called the being. There is only one thing, and that is the being. It is one, it is indivisible, it is unchanging, and it is finite. These attributes he gives. Why? Interesting, that he says being cannot come from non-being, or being cannot go into non-being. Right? Which means being should always exist. Being is always there. So being is eternal. And being cannot change because any change involves some being coming from non-being or being going into non-being. But this is impossible, so change is impossible. So there is no change in this world. So being is unchanging. And being is one, it is not many, because he says the moment you bring in many, the moment you speak of many beings, you are also indirectly speaking of many non-beings, because non-beings have to separate beings. If there are no non-beings in between, everything is one being. But you cannot even think or speak of something called non-being. It's only a term. You can't think, or it cannot even exist. How can non-being be? It can't be, right? So non-being cannot be. So only being is there. So if only being is there, it has to be one. And there can't be many parts. And you might have heard of Zeno's paradoxes, right? Zeno was the one who said motion is impossible. If you want to go from point A to point B, repeat.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were asking me to go forward.
Even I thought
One thing is I want to introduce
The being. Okay. Okay, fine.
Aram se.
Yeah.
Terms are like
Yes, I know.
It's like
That's-
tongue twister.
Tongue
Being,
twister,
not
yeah.
being.
Yes,
Why
yes,
it
yes.
is like it is a very
It is like that.
Yeah.
but
No, for us to grasp that concept, in the
That's
beginning
what-
it just something like tongue twister.
Yeah. See, he says being has three
can
attributes.
write down those 3
Ah.
points, so that's easier.
And
No.
also I didn't like understand it.
Apeiron.
Yeah.
This is very significant to us.
Okay.
Like 5 years to understand.
For all of us.
To 5 years.
It took years to understand all of that.
Whatever he is giving you now, he's just introducing. So take how much you can.
So he says these three are the attributes of being. Being is eternal, being is unitary, and being is unchanging. So why is it eternal? There is a basic assumption he has. Being cannot come from non-being, or being
What exactly do you mean by when you say being? Like, is it like an organ?
existing, anything which is existing.
Like it's a verb in this.
It's a verb which is attributed to something which is there.
is there, present.
Okay. Okay.
Something is, something is not.
Okay.
Whatever it is, that cannot come from something which is not. That cannot come from nothingness.
No,
Right.
one. Did you get it?
So I'm just imagining, okay, if I'm being, I'm there.
You came from
I
something,
will be,
that came
like
from
that.
something.
But can it come from nothing?
I don't know.
No, not you as such you. Can something come from nothing?
No, it has to come from something.
No, but you agree with Christianity, no? God created all of us.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
No, we may not agree, but it's a valid Semitic idea.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
3
yeah.
religions are functioning on the
Yeah,
earth,
correct.
more powerful, which believe on something can come from nothing.
Yes.
But that's why I'm saying. If you connect it with that, you'll understand that this is not a philosophy. The whole lot of nation is fighting out of it, and there's a lot of political fight between these ideas.
So that's why you said it's not saving any
Appearance.
appearance.
Yeah. Even that Christianity idea where it may seem that something is coming out of nothing, they will say something is existing beforehand, and that is the realm of ideas in God's mind.
That only.
At least these ideas were existing
Yeah.
before he can make something with matter. So, even there when one says something came out of nothing, this nothing is, again technically one can read it as complete emptiness
Yes.
or with no attributes, something with no attributes, no qualifications.
Oh, sorry, 1 minute. Should not confuse. It's a very general slip that we can slip it with shunya.
Yeah.
Please, no, these are very, very careful things because
That
generally we have
has to
shunya to
be
zero,
right,
zero
yeah.
to nothing. We
Yeah.
use it so loosely that this is nothing to do with that. We're very careful break.
Here do you mean the Purnam?
No.
Being,
No. No. Don't even connect any of that.
Connect
That's
it
what I'm saying.
and
Let's not use a technical jargon there.
Right.
Purnam, Pujyam, no. No Shunyam, no. This is an idea within that particular context. We'll understand this, then we'll be able to sum it. I know because you may immediately connect to zero.
Yes.
Immediately connect to nothing as
I already connected to zero.
that's what I'm saying.
no, that is open to interpretation. Given, see, Parmenides didn't come and say this is what I mean. He only have aphorisms. Actually, only some poem he wrote, Parmenides poem, and some 3-4 stanzas of it are available to us. That itself is, half of it is speaking about how world cannot come out of, how being cannot come out of non-being, how being should have all these attributes, and the remaining half, he is explaining how this world has come.
Oh.
He is contradicting, so it's very difficult to understand what he is trying to say. When
How
he
does
means,
say the word came? Where did he say
no, he gives some description, first this came, then this came, then this came. He is describing world.
Okay.
I mean, on one side you are saying this is not possible, other side you are giving an elaborate description of how this has happened.
Yeah.
So these are like, we need to somehow, there is a mind-bending exercise to see the consistency in these things. But whatever it is, whatever that second part is, we can give a benefit of doubt saying that it is an illusion, and he is probably explaining the process of how this illusionary world has come. That's okay. But in reality, so-called world doesn't even exist, or this world which we perceive with our senses doesn't really exist, because we perceive change in this world, but change is not possible. We perceive many things in this world, but many things are not possible. We perceive birth and death in this world, but birth and death are not possible. He gives logical explanation for why birth and death are not possible. He says any birth, say particularly birth of anything which is existing, when you say it is born, what do you mean?
Born out of
It is present.
Born out of something?
Came into existence.
Came into existence.
Yeah.
So came into existence means it was not existing earlier.
Yeah.
But how did it come from nothing? When it was not existing earlier, how did it come into being now, into existence now?
Okay,
The answer to
okay.
that-
The context is very congenial, favorable. From the seed, the seed is already there. Is that what you mean?
Something was already there. Let's assume it's very clear that being cannot come out of non-being.
Okay.
Okay? Something cannot come out of nothing. That much is okay. Something cannot completely disappear into nothing.
That is okay, but unchanging
Now,
is little.
I am coming to that. Now, well, maybe one can say something comes out of something.
Like matter cannot be destroyed nor created, and
Energy.
It
energy cannot
transforms.
be.
So,
Yes.
creation is not possible, transformation is possible.
Yeah.
That one may say.
Yeah.
He will say transformation is also not possible.
No.
Because
Not
he,
changing.
yeah, because he would say any transformation is nothing but fundamentally some creation. Something is dying, something is coming. Only then transformation is possible.
Yeah.
Otherwise, transformation is not possible. But then creation is not possible. That is proved already. Creation is not possible. That we agreed.
Yeah.
Now we may say creation is not possible, but transformation is possible. But he is saying if you actually, threadbare, if you analyze the process of transformation, it is nothing but a series of creations.
Yeah.
But creation is not possible, so series of creations is not possible, so transformation is not possible. So change is not possible.
So if I
Take time.
already apply this to our existence right now.
He will not apply. I mean, he is only saying, he is giving an example. Reason can be extended to such an extent that you can completely refute your experience also. He is actually saying, I am discovering what real reality is, not through my experience but through my reason. I don't need to be in this world. I don't need to, be a scientist and study everything in front of me, go there, go here and study. No, I'll just sit here and just do threadbare reasoning and I will tell what the world is. That is a rationalist. That is, so he was the first person to do something like that. He need not even look at the world to see whether his theory is true or not. For him, world itself is not true. So, Zeno who was this celebrated student. Some of you might have heard Zeno's paradoxes, or you would have heard the story Achilles and tortoise. If tortoise has gone even a little ahead of Achilles, he would never catch it. He would never catch up with it. Because every time he takes a step, tortoise would have taken a little more step. So this gap would always remain between them. I mean, theoretically, this will always remain between them, so he will never reach the tortoise. Another way of putting it is, Zeno would say, if I want to reach from point A to B, first I should cover half, but to reach this half, I should cover half of that, to reach this half, I should cover half of that, and so on and on. So by the time even I reach next point, I should cover infinite points in between, which will never happen. Because half of this series will go on infinitely. I will never be able to put my next step. I will never be able to move, so motion is impossible. So Zeno and Parmenides are both saying the same thing. Zeno is saying there are no many, Parmenides is saying there is only one. That is what they are saying. But just imagine someone can think like this. I mean, either he is a complete idiot or he is an extraordinary intellect. How can and why should one think? I mean, what guts should one have to be able to reject what your experience is giving, completely reject what your experience is giving and say this is all false? Everything is actually shouting, no, in front of your sense organs. All these material objects are shouting. If I try to pass through that wall would be pushing me back. Everything is shouting. But in spite of all this noise around me, I will just say you are all illusion. Through pure reasoning. That is a jump, an extraordinary jump. So, I am giving you various instances. You see, someone brought imperceptible, perceptible, someone again took back from perceptible to imperceptible, someone is using only reason, denying all experience. Like this is also someone who is trying to use only reason and giving a counterintuitive description of reality. So there are numerous people who have thought of reality in extremely artful ways.
Yeah.
Imaginative.
Correct. Then how is
Charvaka?
Rationalist?
No. Charvaka is complete opposite of Parmenides. He would say, if my experience and my reason contradict with each other, I will go with my experience. Because my experience is saying there are only 4 bhutas, why should I reason about some 5th bhuta or Atman? Atman is established through reason. Or 5th bhuta is established through inference, not experience. You can't experience Akash. So, Charvaks are opposite of Parmenides. They are like empiricists. The opposite term for rationalist is empiricist. Empirical, verifiable, cross-verifiable things, those are like that.
So how does the being operate?
I don't know. At least Parmenides didn't tell me yet. No, but that's what, so the complaint against Parmenides is he doesn't care a damn about saving the appearances. Why don't you tell how this world also came into being? Why do you stop there? I mean, he used something like how world came into being, but again that is like a poetic thing. But if you are speaking logically here, speak logically there also. How world is coming into being, give step-by-step procedure so that it is convincing. You can't speak, logic half portion and poetry other portion. Either you speak
Logical and radical, no?
That logic itself is so radical. That is the problem. That poetry is not so, but since that logic is so radical, it's difficult to digest the remaining half, which is poetic, whatever it is. So these are all fragments which are available to us, and using our own reason, our own imagination, we need to fill them. Whatever we can take, we should take. But there are people who criticized Parmenides a lot. They said there are some flaws in his basic assumptions. First of all, why should there be an assumption that something cannot come out of nothing? Maybe. That may be possible in reality. Who are you to say that it's not possible? You can't look at perceptible reality and extend it to imperceptible reality. That's a jump you are making. Maybe imperceptible reality behaves in a very different way than perceptible reality. So, the basic assumptions themselves may be flawed. Those are the complaints against Parmenides and Zeno as well. That's a big debate. But anyway, I'm just giving this as an example to say how one can draw very radical conclusions just with pure reasoning. And then there is Spinoza, who is again a kind of a monist. He said, God is nature and nature is God. This entire world is nothing but God. This entire nature is nothing but God. This is called pantheism. Everything is God. And mind and matter are two aspects of God, are two modes of being. It is not separate, they are not separate, fundamentally separate things, or that they cannot interact with each other. They are two modes of being of the same entity called God. He was also troubled with Descartes' mind-body dichotomy, so he was also trying to address that problem. Mind and body, how do they work? How do they interact with each other? He is saying because they are just two attributes of the same entity called God. Hence, they align, they go in unison, they act as a unit. So he tried to solve that problem like that.
Just because the name sounds like, is it Prakriti and Purusha?
Yeah, where?
God
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
No, Prakriti and Purusha are completely different. Here he is saying God and nature are one. They are the same. It's not like one is interacting with the other. God is nature, nature is God.
So God slash nature. And
It is one. It is not comma. So we'll come to Descartes, who is the most important and the biggest criminal also, in some sense, who has created all these distinctions and problems, divisions and problems we are facing today. All kinds of dichotomies which we can think of, they can be traced back to Descartes. All kinds of dichotomies like public, private, tradition, modern, science, humanities, mind, matter, body, soul, all kinds of things you can think of, they can be traced back to Descartes. Though he didn't intend that, he actually gave more importance to mind, but people after him, they took only his theory of body or matter and left mind for dogs, whatever it is. So he basically said, mind and matter, they are two fundamental substances of the universe. The entire universe is just these two substances, mind and matter. It's made up of only these two. And these two substances are so fundamentally different that they cannot interact with each other. Because mind is unextended, it doesn't occupy space. Matter is extended, our body, these material objects, all of them are extended in space. So how can an unextended mental object force these material things? Like I am trying to move my body, I am able to move. Even an elephant which has such a huge body, with a small thought it can move the entire body. How is that possible? I mean, it's very counterintuitive to our idea of force, right? We think so much of force should be applied to, suppose you want to move an elephant, you need a lot of force. But for an elephant to move itself, it just needs a thought. So how is this working? How is the mind able to move such a huge object, such a huge body? It's very difficult to imagine, it's very difficult to explain. So he couldn't give a solution to that. He also sort of left it open-ended. He didn't solve this problem of interaction between mind and body. He said they cannot interact with each other, but I don't know how they seem to interact with each other. I want to walk, I am walking, I want to lift, I am lifting, I want to get up, I am getting up. Only my thought is enough for me to move my body. I don't need an external body to come and push my body or lift me, nothing like that. My thought is a cause.
Okay.
So this thought is a mental thing, it's not a physical thing.
Correct.
So how is an unextended mental thing moving an extended material object? How? Where is the force? What is the equation of force here? Is it F equals ma or ma square? What is m? What is a? We don't know. So it's an enigma. So how mind and body interact is an enigma for the West even now.
But what about like your own physical energy? You consume food and your body is making that that food is burnt inside of energy and then you use that to lift. Does that not offer any explanation to this question? I don't know.
No. Where is the external force? F equals ma speaks of external force. but my thought is internal.
For example, somebody in coma. There is no mind. If that is the right example, Rajesh.
No, you continue.
No, if that is, I just told her, suppose somebody is in coma, then there is, even though the physical body gets everything that it wants, because you do not have a mind to move it, it's not moving. Whether it's the right example,
That.
Neurons, they send the signal. We have been studying all that in science, no? Like, does that not offer any explanation to this?
No, first of all, there is this neuroscience which is there, which tries to study what is happening in your mind by looking at the kind of signals which your neurons are passing to each other. Particularly when you think a lot, what happens is your brain consumes a lot of oxygen and a lot of blood flows there, and given that you will see which portion of brain is active. That's what we do. But that does not tell us in any way that it is purely material. Maybe there is a non-material thing which is guiding this motion of matter, even within the brain. Why am I getting that thought at that time?
Some stimulus reaction.
That stimulus, is it always material stimulus or can it be non-material stimulus also?
Okay.
That is the question. There are material stimulus which is there. I see some animal, I get up.
Yeah.
It's a kind of material stimulus.
Yeah.
But without seeing anything, suddenly I get a thought, oh, I need to do something, I need to finish some work, I get up. Where is the material stimulus here? Something from your memory may click. Something from your emotions, feelings or habits, whatever it is. So, science still believes that it can be explained in a purely material way, but they have not given even one single example where this particular configuration of matter will give rise to consciousness. They have not given anything like that. But they believe there is some particular configuration of matter. When matter comes in this configuration, somehow consciousness springs out of it. So it is called epiphenomenon. But they don't know which configuration that is. If they know, then they can create another human.
Yeah.
It's just a material configuration you need to do. No, but we don't know. How do we get the sense of I? This is a very big question.
Yes.
The sense of I is a very big question. Even the sense of time, if you think, sense of time is very different from, say, sense of urgency. You don't sense time, but you sense urgency. But if I make a statement, okay, it is 9 o'clock, I have to leave, or it is 9 o'clock, he has to leave. This statement is actually speaking of some kind of urgency, but it is not capturing the sense of urgency which the conscious being would have. So there is an experiential thing. And many things, the sense of possession. When you take that phone, I may not mind, but when you take my phone, I will mind. Both are matter only. But I see these both material objects very differently. It is mine. What is the sense of svatva? What is the sense of ownership? So these entities, like we were discussing earlier, they are objective. They have a force. Though I want to be detached to my possession, I can't be. It forces me to look at it, to be attached to it, to be more careful about it. But materially speaking, both are same matter. Both are different from my body. I would not be affected if that phone is destroyed or this phone is destroyed. My body is not affected, matter is not affected, but my mind is affected. So how do we explain all these things? How do we explain the idea of morals from pure matter? How do you explain the idea of family? How do you explain the idea of responsibility? How do you explain the idea of ownership? All these things you cannot reduce to physical equations. You cannot reduce to equations of motion of matter. Which equation of motion will tell you that this is a ownership equation? Which equation will tell you that this is a attachment equation, or this is a moral obligation?
Sorry to interrupt, but there is one in jurisprudence, in law, there is a legal paradox which usually is given to us. Wherein, like how you said, if supposing a blind man is walking on a cliff, and then if he is going to fall off from the cliff, and if I am standing there, who can see that he is going to fall off, whether it is my moral duty to stop him, or whether it is my legal duty to stop him.
Okay.
Supposing if there is no law that I should stop a blind man or any man from falling off a cliff, then I am absolutely protected by the law to let him fall off the cliff.
Fine.
But when you're saying about the, so the test for that was that the moral duty is different from a legal duty.
True. Yeah, moral duty is different from legal duty. So in some country this law may be applicable, in some other country that law may not be applicable, but morality is something independent of legal.
Legality, yes, actually.
So-
So that is how they're different, and that is where they put the test.
Hmm.
So when you are saying about this, about this particular problem of how would you decide,
Hmm.
how the equation of ownership.
Yeah, yeah.
So I am just trying to come to that point of giving an example that there the equation of what a legal duty has been probably inferred in that manner.
No, I am asking a more ontological question. Equation of ownership in the sense, can I give an equation in terms of whatever F equals ma or whatever concepts, physical concepts, which will translate into these mental concepts? Concepts of ownership or concept of attachment or concept of morality. These things, can they be reduced or transformed into some material motion? So, can I say when two hydrogen atoms mix with two carbon atoms, I will be more moral?
Supposing if there is a law which makes it punishable, then there is motion set in place, isn't it?
No, but what is the concept of law itself is also, I give some ontological status to that law. If I don't give, I will violate that law. It is me who is respecting that law. So there is a sense of fear, there is a sense of fear of death or fear of punishment. So first you need to capture the idea of fear. So when do you, in what material terms can you capture the idea of fear? And see, it's simply putting, some say that what they try to explain many things which we do in terms of material thing. Like they say when you smoke a cigarette, it's they reduce it to saying that now your body, your molecules are asking for more, your cells are asking for more, so you are smoking a cigarette or something like that. Or when you have done a lot of exercise, your body is asking to take rest, so you are taking rest. But there are cases where we continue in spite of that pain. There are cases where we stop ourselves from smoking. How do you explain cases where you harm your own body? Are the material atoms asking for harming themselves?
No, that is a big philosophical question. Suicide.
It is. I mean, that is okay, some analysis, some inference you are drawing, but what is the theory behind that inference? What is your theory of mind? There is no proper theory of mind. Do you have a theory of functioning of mind? That is the question. What is, like there are laws of motion, are there laws of thinking? Those kind of questions are there. Anyway, I think this will take much more time to cover this, so I will not get into them.
Yeah.
I will just jump into examples which I wanted to discuss of art as an inquiry into reality. Yeah, it's like I just thought.
This is one semester course, which you wrote on this board.
Yeah.
But I finished it in one lecture in the course.
Yeah, it's how much they understood that's important. You can finish.
I think this is when language comes into play, no? Which can articulate, influence your thought, and use some technology to move it further.
Yeah, language and audience also comes into play. But good. Whatever we discussed, I think it is good. I need not cover everything. My basic idea is so many people have thought about reality in so many ways.
So, 1 minute.
Yeah.
It's fine, but just as a kind of a self-thinker, self-thinking enterprise, where do you think this mind-body dichotomy is applicable to us?
As in dancers or in general?
In general, dance is, okay, let me be quite specific to dancers, to artists. Where do you feel the pinches? And something is speaking, and can we take one more extra step from our side so that, something, why this should be spoken to artists? Do you think it's only to medicine or psychology? That's fine. We are, but something is interesting. Can we say something there?
Like yellow.
Good. There's one way to look at it. there are many ways here. There are many ways. That is one way in input, that's fine. But the basic idea is someone is trying to not differentiate body and mind throughout a text. Have you noticed, especially text comes from Arthashastra, there is no distinction between body and mind at all. Like when they're speaking about it, Descartes is furthermore, it's very significant, and you will understand that furthermore when you discuss about Indian understanding of body. So there are furthermore discussions on it. Because mind-body dichotomy, perhaps, I thought one of you all would say, hey, this is not the way a text of Arthashastra would never speak mind-body as a dichotomous entity at all. Because this is an exact question one can ask, because most of the emotional content they are dealing, they would also help that Anga is also part of it. The Anga has a participation with the entire body, Anga Pratyanga Upanga of Sharira has a very clear-cut participation when it comes to discussion on Bhava and Rasa, and in any other areas, the dichotomy is never felt. Not handled, it's not bundled, it's very clear. That is another question. Now, in Bharata's way of, when he says Sharira, what does he mean? So that's another question which he's not explaining, because it's maybe perhaps a very given idea or a trivial idea during that text. When someone was reading such a text, understanding the word Sharira, there are differences between the word Sharira, Deha, they are all not same, first of all. They are different terms. But in that sense, they have a very clear-cut understanding. Descartes, if Descartes read Arthashastra, they'll throw it out. Yeah, they would comment it. Left, right, and center, you comment it. But we come from an assumption, or not assumption. We come from that particular thing, that mind and body are one entity. As the question, no, the mind thinks the hand is extending. The mind and body are seen as two different things. Can I treat my mind through body? Can I treat body through mind? Can I treat only body so that we leave mind? Can I treat only mind so that we leave body? This is also.
There are multiple ways of solving it. First of all, one is you can reject dualism. You can just say there is only body, like scientist materialism. They don't have problem of dualism. Or you can say everything is only mind. That is like pure idealism theory. That my mind is projecting all these material things. Even my body is a projection of my mind. That is another way. Another thing is you can have dualism but solve the problem through something else, which Vaisheshik does in one way. It says here mind means soul, mind means Atman. What Descartes is speaking of mind is Atman in Indian tradition. So the dichotomy between Atman and Sharira, that needs to be filled. One way in which Vaisheshik solves it is it brings in a third entity called Manas. Manas is a link between Atman and Sharira. So that is a detailed process. Professor Navjyoti may cover a bit, otherwise we will probably discuss it some other time. But there are theories which solve this problem in various ways. In Indian tradition, there are many solutions, many different solutions. In the West, there is not yet any. So they keep Atman and body separate and still solve the link between them, or they completely engulf Atman into body, or they completely engulf body into Atman. Different solutions are there. Okay? Yeah.
I want to see it as a problem. Just because we have identified two entities.
Yeah, just now.
Problems.
Because in our experience we see them interacting, but theoretically we can't explain how they are interacting.
Then why is it a problem?
It is a problem because I am unable to understand what I am experiencing. And not just understanding, the theory seems to say the opposite thing. The theory seems to say that they cannot interact with each other. Descartes' theory. But they are interacting in reality. It's a contradiction. In the sense, mind is unextended, body is extended. How can an unextended thing move an extended thing? How does one explain this phenomenon? How do they interact? At what portion do they interact? What is the nature of their interaction? Actually, they cannot interact, but they are interacting. So it is a problem. So there are Indian schools which solve that problem. That's what I was saying.
See, just to give anyway, he's dealing with Panchabuddha also. before that, like if he says the mind and body there, people are trying to say entire mind action through neurons. Action of neurons, bundles of neurons in the brain, nothing more is there. It's only microvolts of details, which is information passing from one neuron to the other neuron. That is what it is. So can we simulate the entire brain? If it's so, you're trying to crack a brain, and say the brain is cracked. The formula of how brain working, lifting a hand is cracked because it's only electrical pulse details of so many volts, microvolts. How does the microvolt come? Because of protein. How does the protein come? Because of mitochondria. That's fine. How does mitochondria come? Because of the food what you take. Fine. From there, they're trying to simulate an artificial system and say by passing all these microvolts can hand move. Argument's sake. Then you say you're cracked it. The solution is that this is how we are all walking, this is how we are talking. You can slowly extend this theory. But ultimately, there is another problem where you'll never be able to crack is the idea of soul. Which we are yet to crack. Which is that is what his mind is.
See, many objections can be there against so-called consciousness arising out of body. One is body is extended in space. There are various parts in the body occupying at the same time, right? Now, why is it the case that all of them are working as a unit? What is giving a unity of action to the body? You may say it is brain, but brain itself has many parts. Why are all those parts working as a unit? Is there a team leader? Or each team member in this is going on his own this thing? If there is a team leader, the team leader is material or non-material?
There was a movie a while ago, Johnny Depp or something, I think, in which he's a scientist and he uploads his consciousness onto the computer and he preserves himself. So his body is not transcendence. Yeah. So his body is gone. He's a dying scientist, but he died. But his consciousness will continue to stay in the computer. And then, of course, something happens. He uploads it to the net, and so he becomes all-pervasive. He's everywhere. So omnipotent, like that. And then gives you the thought that so this could be God, and this is what we were talking about, or something like that.
It's a small example. Actually, when again going back to the Vaidyas, some of them, when you go and actually tell your physical problems, like I have stomach pain, I'm not able to do this, do that. Some of them recommend, okay, you have this, so you take Mahabharata, and from this Parvata to that Parvata you read. And then they just read it for a specific number of days, it will cure. So again, it connects back to what you said about that you cannot actually have only one thing. It's a web of knowledge system through which you bring in all this. So Vaidya has to exactly know for this to solve a matter problem.
Yes.
What is that thing that you should trigger through Etika or epic or something?
Yeah. So he has a knowledge of Mahabharata not just as an epic but as a medical
treatise.
Treatise. Yeah. So one should have some kind of scholarship from that angle.
Yes.
So it's for anyone. I mean, not just Vaidya, for an artist also, like we were discussing, they should be well versed in each of these things. If you want to be very good in your thing, you should be minimally good in everything.
Yeah.
As simple as that. You can't be very good in your thing just by doing your thing. You should be minimally good in everything and then very good in your thing. The depth will come only when you have sufficient width. Both are related. Okay, I quickly finish this off because I want to give an example. I want to connect this entire workshop to art. Somehow I just want to finish with this example. So almost all Indian theories accept these Panchabhutas, and each of these Panchabhutas have their own specific quality, guna. So these are called dravyas, and each dravya has a guna of its own. We know the Panchabhutas Prithvi, Aap, Tejas, Vayu, Akash, and each one has its own Visesh guna. Gandhavati Prithvi. So Prithvi is that we should not think of, the problem is we translate them into English and then we try to imagine the English equivalents of these elements. We translate them as earth, water, air, fire and space, and the moment we think of Prithvi, we think of Mitti. No, Prithvi is a particular locus which can hold smell. It is the only specific locus which can hold smell. So wherever you find smell, understand that there is Prithvi there. Similarly, Aap is something which can hold rasa. Tejas is something which can hold rupa. Rupa is colored. Vayu is something which can hold sparsha, and Akash is something which can hold shabda. this is the understanding of these elements. And any entity you take in this world, any whole, material whole you take, it is a combination of all these bhutas. But there are only, there are some wholes which are purely made up of one kind of bhuta, and those are our sense organs. Our eyes, not the physical eyeball, but chakshu as an indriya.